Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan. I don't think they're gonna make it to Tython. In Chapter 13 of The Mandalorian, Din Djarin makes a deal with Ahsoka Tano. He'll help her get rid of some local warlord, and in return Ahsoka Tano will help train Baby Yoda, aka Gogurt. But instead of following through with her promise, Ahsoka Tano tells the Mandalorian to take the Baby Yoda to a world known as Tython, have him visit a Jedi temple so that he can choose his own path there. This is really exciting news for hardcore Star Wars fans who are kind of invested in the legendary lore of Star Wars. This includes people who like the Old Republic, the Ancient Jedi, and so on. Tython is basically the mythical birthplace of the Jedi and the Sith, or at least their predecessor. Its return has huge implications on the foundation of this Force religion. This is a subject we'll probably go in depth into on our other channel, Generation Tech, so check out that when it comes out. The other reason why we won't talk about Tython too much in depth yet in this video is because I believe, as I said before, that Mando Dad and the sentient Kiwi boy are gonna have a lot of trouble getting to Tython. Heck, they might not even get there in the next episode or the next few episodes. The reason is Tython was located in the deep, deep core of the galaxy. Now you might be wondering to yourself, why haven't I heard of this planet? After all, it's just a few light years from Corellia and Coruscant, the center of the galaxy. Well, you see, at the center of every galaxy, including our flat disc-shaped galaxy, is a massive gravitational force that keeps everything together. In this area of the galaxy, star systems are densely packed together and occasionally do collide. There are also several massive black holes. This creates an extremely dangerous and difficult place to navigate through. Like in the unknown region, hyperspace travel is nearly impossible because of all these gravitational anomalies. Hidden in all of this mess in the deep core is the Tython system, which was made up of the star Tythos and its 11 planets and dozens of moons. The 5th planet in orbit around Tythos was known as Tython. And this is where Ahsoka Tano has recommended the Mandalorian to take the Baby Yoda to, which honestly is kind of a dick move. It's like the equivalent of me telling Steve that if he helps me move my apartment, I will teach him the art of bullshitting. But instead of actually teaching him, I send him on an epic journey on the Annapurna circuit to the top of the Himalayas where, he could potentially die. This is not a reasonable fulfillment of my side of the bargain. And it's not like Ahsoka Tano doesn't see the piece of crap that our boy Din is flying. I mean, the Razor Crest has been chewed on by giant aquatic monsters, dismantled by Jawas, hit multiple times by lasers, crashed several times, and has also been infested with spiders, fell into the ocean, and then was hastily repaired by a species with webbed hands. This ship could hardly make a simple sublight journey between Tatooine and Trask. How does anyone expect it to make perhaps one of the most difficult journeys in the galaxy? So how do you get to a planet like Tython? Well, there are actually several different ways. First, we have the Han Solo method, aka the Kessel Run. Kessel, like Tython, was a planet surrounded by a large cluster of matter. In this case, it's known as the Acades Maelstrom. This huge storm of material surrounded the planet of Kessel and rotated around a giant gravity well known as the Maw. In these conditions, one can expect to find giant flying carbon bergs and ice chunks, along with terrifying vacuum-breathing monsters. The Acades Maelstrom does have a safe route through it, which is maintained by a series of beacons. Unfortunately for Han Solo, when he was attempting his Kessel Run, he was being chased by an Imperial-class Star Destroyer and a wing of TIE fighters, so instead of following the safe and known clear path, Han Solo kind of cuts right through the Maelstrom into a dense field of boulders, ice, and electrical storms. I am definitely not recommending Din Djarin try this method of flying through nebulas and black holes and whatnot. I mean, there are very specific reasons why Han Solo was able to survive this journey and why Din Djarin most likely would not. For one, Han Solo is probably one of the best pilots in Star Wars history. Then you have Chewbacca, who's probably even a better pilot than he was, and he was just sitting in the co-pilot seat. At the same time, you have Lando Calrissian, who uploaded a very advanced droid brain into the Millennium Falcon that helped with navigation. And lastly, the Millennium Falcon is a classic example of why you should never underestimate a Corellian freighter. It had both the shields and armor to handle this very dangerous trip. In comparison, Din Djarin is definitely not as good of a pilot as Han Solo, and his ship is nowhere near as robust as the Millennium Falcon. And lastly, there's Din Djarin's very regressive view on droids, so no navigation help from a droid. So I definitely don't recommend that Din Djarin just kind of wing this trip to Tython. He needs to prepare himself, or else this won't be the last season of The Mandalorian, and the last few episodes of The Mandalorian will be him sitting in his ship dying slowly of exposure. The one thing that the Mandalorian does have is the Baby Yoda. Now, in the early days of the Galactic Republic, before all those hyperspace lanes were paved and kind of marked, the Jedi Explorer Guild were at the forefront of creating new paths across the galaxy. Using the Force, these explorers were able to kind of feel their way through hyperspace and establish routes that would be safe for others to use. Then we have the Chiss, a blue-skinned near-human species from the unknown region. They didn't even have nav computers, so they had to rely on Force sensitives to guide their ships through the hyperspace lanes. And because there was such a strategic importance to the Chiss ascendancy, these individuals were closely guarded and kept secret from almost everyone. Now, the Chiss had a different name for the Force. It was called the Third Sight, and surprisingly, only young Chiss girls had this ability, and it generally faded away along with their innocence by the time they reached their teenage years. I blame social media and unrealistic beauty expectations. Now, Baby Yoda is clearly a very powerful individual, and it's even possible that this little guy has been holding back his Force powers somewhat. It's definitely an option for the Mandalorian to have the Baby Yoda step in and pilot the ship all the way to Tython. Now, of course, Baby Yoda has never done such a thing. It might be a bit more complicated navigating towards Tython than compared to other planets, although it should be mentioned that Tython should appear like a beacon to Go-Gurt because it's incredibly rich in the Force. We're not done yet, though. There are even more options to get to Tython. There are artifacts that are usually powered by the Force, which can guide individuals to certain secret locations. We saw this with the Sith Wayfinder. Shaped like a Sith holocron, it was found by Kylo Ren, and then used as sort of a hyperspace compass to guide him to Exegol, which is where Darth Sidious and the Sith Eternal were waiting to retake the galaxy. Luke Skywalker actually had a very similar device known as the Jedi Compass. He eventually would use that device to find Ahch-To. I'm pretty sure Luke will also be on the lookout for Tython, which brings us to the exciting possibility that we might see a young Luke Skywalker on Tython with the Mandalorian and Din Djarin. If you take a look at the timeline of the Mandalorian, Luke Skywalker at this point in time has yet to establish the new Jedi Order and is just kind of roaming around the galaxy looking for clues and artifacts of the first Jedi Temple. So from a timeline standpoint, it could definitely happen. So maybe the next thing that Din Djarin and Baby Yoda has to do is to find a Force-powered compass of some kind and use that Wayfinder to guide them to Tython. Now, Tython was not just the birth of the original Jedi or the ancient Jedi. It was also home to many different species that would eventually immigrate to core worlds like Coruscant, Alderaan, Corellia, all the founding planets in the core regions of the galaxy. There is a deeply rooted history between the early Republic and Tython. And up until 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, people still knew how to get to Tython through established hyperspace lanes. This knowledge would eventually be lost, of course, but this is yet another way for Din Djarin to find his way to Tython. It's possible that the Mandalorian could find some ancient nav computer or star chart that has safe passage to the system. Although I gotta say, Din Djarin has to stop going up to random bar patrons and asking them for their help because it's like the Star Wars equivalent of Craigslist. There's a chance you might get what you want, and then there's an even greater chance that they just want to rob you. You gotta be careful when you're wearing Beskar. Anyway, that is my theory on what's gonna happen in the next few episodes. And Tython is going to be the eventual goal of Baby Yoda and Din Djarin, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be very difficult for them to get there. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about my theory. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. My name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie and you are the protagonist.